Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's open forum. As you guys know, we've had lots of new forums come out. We just had some more come out yesterday for the showings and that as well, which the Florida Realtors emailed you about this morning. I don't know if you guys saw that, but they just popped up yesterday. The showing forms that we've been talking about, but the buyer brokerage agreement, the revised one, we wanted to have an absolute superstar of an expert come in and talk to you guys, and so we have. Attorney Daniel Villazon. He is here to talk to you guys, to explain, to answer your questions. We kind of went over the forms last week as far as what they actually say, but you guys had lots of questions, and Mr. Villazon is here to help you guys. So I'd like to introduce Dan at this time. He has tons of experience with FREC, tons of experience with DBPR, and he knows everything there is to know about real estate. And this stuff it's new to everyone, but he is the legal expert for this for you guys. So Dan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
Okay, there you are.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I don't know if we're going to go over the forms paragraph by paragraph. It sounds like you've done that already. What I'd like to do is just go over, if anyone has any general questions. I've been on top. I'm not involved in the lawsuit, but I've been involved as a board attorney for Osceola County and Tampa in the discussions with NAR and what the lawsuit involves and what are the requirements. And I have talked to some of the attorneys at Florida Realtors in regard to what they're doing with the forms. And it's still, to me, it seems like it's still a work in progress. They're still working and sending out forms. I got something last night in regard to the new showing agreement. But the one thing I want to emphasize is that this is not a FREC issue. This has nothing to do with state law or your real estate license or your obligations under FREC. This is purely a realtor situation in regard to the lawsuit. And unfortunately, certain things had to change in order to settle the lawsuit. Specifically, and I guess this is the topic we're going to discuss today, is the buyer broker agreement before touring the homes. If anyone has any questions, please chime in. I don't know if you want me to go over paragraph by paragraph, but it sounds like you already did that. I just found out there's going to be another webinar in regard to the contract by Joanna Watkins, which will be Monday for brokers, July 29th, and Tuesday for everyone else, for all members on July 30th. And they're the people who wrote the contract, so I would say they're a lot more familiar than me. Does anyone have, there was one question, and I guess I'll address it now. Ryan, you had talked about possibly finding a way to enforce the payment of the buyer's fee and at closing and not being able to close it if the buyer backs out of the agreement.
Yes.
Okay. I understand your concern. I just honestly think, one, the licensees are not a party to the contract. They're third-party beneficiaries. And I don't know how FREC would look upon not going through with a transaction because you didn't get paid. I honestly think the only recourse would be to sue on the exclusive buyer's agreement that you entered into with the buyer. The problem with the agreement is there has to be some steps taken before you can actually file a lawsuit. There's a mediation agreement, and you would have to go through mediation with the buyer before you can even file a lawsuit. So I don't think that would be a remedy unless someone else has some other ideas. But I think if we were to stop a transaction, a buyer and seller from buying property because we didn't get paid or because the buyer is refusing to pay us, FREC would definitely open up a case of dishonest dealing or interfering with the transaction or something to that effect if we were not to allow the transaction to go through. There's also the issue that you can't file liens for commissions and things like that. And your main complaint would be with the buyer if the buyer didn't pay the money. So you couldn't, maybe you can put a lien on the property after they buy the property, but I think it's going to be a difficult challenge if you got a buyer that is not willing to honor the exclusive buyer brokerage agreement.
Are you aware of anybody a seller ever saying, you know what, I'm not paying this commission to anybody?
Yeah, I've seen it, and they've been sued. They've been sued on the listing agreement if there's a tight listing agreement. Yes, many times.
Okay. So it would be similar to that.
Yeah, but it's in the civil court. It's not something that you can. And I've seen I've seen some licensees get in trouble by putting a lien on the property because the seller wouldn't pay. And there's a strict prohibition against putting a lien on the property unless you're specifically given written permission to do that. So the commission looks very poorly upon filing liens in order to collect a commission.
Okay. And there's nothing we can put on our form to make sure that we can collect that. There's nothing to put on there. Putting something on there that's not legal is not legal.
Yeah, I thought about it because I saw your question in advance and I was thinking about it and I thought maybe a lien or something like that. But really, your obligation is your relationship is with the buyer, not the owner of the land. Maybe I'd have to think it through. Maybe after closing, putting a lien on the property for your commission, and I think that could be part of a lawsuit if you sue them, and maybe put a less pendant saying there's action. I don't know. I have to really think that through. But as right now, my answer is no. I don't think there's anything we can do right now.
Okay. Can we not? It's separate initials to do the arbitration mediation. Can we not agree to do that?
I think you can, because this form, like I said, is not a FREC form. It's not mandatory form. This is a realtor form that they created. And I've seen other offices. You're more than welcome to create your own exclusive buyer brokerage agreement. The settlement doesn't say you have to use a specific form. It just says you must have a buyer broker agreement. So yeah, that absolutely, I think that can be tinkered with. Yes.
Okay. One of the questions we had, when exactly, and this might not be your purview, but when exactly do we need to have this form? At what point of talking to a buyer? So let's say we have an out-of-state buyer and we're sending them videos. This happens quite a bit. We send them videos of properties. At what point do we need to have this form signed when we first start talking to them, before we send them a video of a property, before we, or anybody? We meet them at Panera Bread to go show them houses. When do they need to sign?
Again, there's no specific rule. Like when we had agency disclosure, you had to sign it before introducing someone to a property. There's nothing in the settlement that says it's just before touring the properties. So before you show them the house, you're going to want to have the agreement signed, and that's the only time period. And again, I can't emphasize enough, I don't know how this is going to be enforced, because this is a civil matter between the realtors and that lawsuit. It has nothing to do with the Florida Real Estate Commission or state law. This isn't state law. This is an agreement that realtors made. And I guess if you're a realtor, you've agreed to comply with these terms.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions?
Actually, I do, sir.
Okay.
Some of us are not realtors, we're licensees. What are we supposed to do?
Can you repeat that, please? I'm sorry. Who's speaking?
She's saying of some people here are just licensees and not realtors with the R and the copyright,
right?
Trademark. So, but it's MLS related more than anything, right?
Yeah, that's the main crux of the lawsuit was the use of the MLS and the offer of compensation. That's the critical aspect of this lawsuit, was that you cannot make offers of compensation in the MLS. Again, if you're a licensee, you don't have to comply with the terms of this settlement, but I guess you risk the exposure of being sued if someone thinks it's antitrust, but I doubt that would happen. But like I can't emphasize enough, this is just a realtor thing. This is just a realtor form, and you're not required. It's probably best practice to use the forms because they're trying to protect you from liability, but you're not bound to these forms. They're not a state mandate.
Okay, we have a question on chat. Is a listing agent bound to see a buyer brokerage agreement before confirming a showing? I would think not. No, it's in fact, it's none of your business. You can't even request.
Right, that's your own agreement with your buyer.
Could permission to file a lien? This is by Carissa. Can permission to file a lien be written into the buyer brokerage agreement?
The problem is who you're going to file the lien on the property. You're going to hold up the sellers. You're going to put, you don't have a right to lien the seller's property. Maybe after the transaction closes and it becomes your client's property, file a lien then.
I think that's what she's asking.
Yeah. I have to look into details, but yeah, I think that could be possible.
Brian says we've had agent broker commission joinders in the past per seller. Brian's a commercial guy. He's had agent, broker, commission joinders in the past per seller's attorney.
What is that? I don't understand.
I don't know what he means by that either. Agent, broker, commission joinders. I don't know.
I know on the commercial side, there's separate commission agreements. And I know the commercial brokers are pretty used to this way, that there's non-offers of compensation and they get their own agreement with their buyers, but you're dealing with much more sophisticated buyers. But I'm not sure. I've never heard of joinder. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, and you have to call for, you guys, any of you guys who have looked on LoopNet or whatever, you have to call for the co-broke usually and all that stuff. So they've had to do that in the commercial world always, and theirs has never been decided by arbitration by a board. If you've got procuring cause, you got to go to court.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point I haven't thought about, but that may be something to ask the Florida Realtors why they did it, why they put the mediation clause in there, and not just go straight to litigation. But right now, if that's the situation, that's what's in the form.
Okay, but it does seem like anything else. If not everybody initials it, then it's not
right
a valid part of it. There's separate initials for it. Any other questions? I know you guys have lots of questions.
I have a question. This is Winnie Tam. How are you?
Good.
Agreement that we set up that is not will do the transaction by the settlement to credit as like they pay the buyer will pay the commission on the table while we're doing the settlement. So they cannot do that anymore, right? How they paid us, like let's say
whatever the instructions are to the title company, it depends on whether the seller is offering compensation,
right?
Or if the seller is not offering compensation, you have your exclusive buyer's agreement that you provide to the closing agent saying, take this out of the proceeds, things like that. Or there has to be a charge. They'll have to collect your commission from the buyer based on your exclusive buyer's brokerage agreement. I
see. Thank you. So that means we set the agreement. So just provide this to the title company, and then they will do all the.
That's the hope. I hope the title companies will do that. I hope the title companies will collect the funds from the buyer up front.
I see.
And it's going to be it'll be a line in the statement, in the closing statement.
Right. Thank you. So that we need to put the agreement up front to the title company after we have a contract. Then they will do the settlement the numbers, the estimate to the buyer to upfront the money.
Yes.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
They're going to treat it like when you give them a listing agreement.
Yeah.
They're going to treat it like that.
Yes.
Like they pay the listing agent, they're going to pay the buyer's agent.
Yes.
Based on the instructions and the contractual obligations.
I see. Thank you.
Tammy, you have your hand up. Sorry, I didn't see it earlier.
No problem. So I was gonna have an out-of-town buyer sign the buyer broker agreement. I was doing video walkthroughs with them, and since it didn't start till next week, I thought, okay, she was giving me so much problem. I'm like, okay, well, we'll just wait for a week, and then you have to sign it. So this was what she said to me. Hey, Tammy, 2 requests regarding the agreement. Can the county be added after each address? Blah, blah, blah. Because she wanted me just to put the addresses what I was showing her, which was fine. My other concern is in section 8. Does it imply that if a broker forwards a property to me to consider, am I bound by the agreement? Since we are finding the properties online, I wouldn't want to be bound in that matter. Thank you for your help.
I think they're bound if they sign that agreement with you until the termination. It's a protection period. So I think they are bound even if they find the property on their own to this buyer's agreement.
Okay, so that's what you think they're saying, is if they find something on their own? I wasn't really sure what she meant.
Yeah. My understanding of the contract is yes, they're bound unless 2 or 3 the listing expired, you release them and the protection period has passed, or the listing expired and they obtained another buyer's agent.
So I guess if they question this agreement, I say I can't really change it because it was written by the Florida board or whatever, right? You mean
no, you can't change it. You can modify it, but you need to be careful because supposedly, the Florida Realtors have developed this form to protect you and to keep you out of litigation.
Right.
But I know some firms are coming up with their own forms, and that's something we can consider in the future because some of the things you may not like. So there's no, like I said, it's not a state requirement that you use this form. This is a realtor form that you can take it or leave it.
Okay, let me go through. I'll get to Debbie. Debbie has her hand up. I'll get to that in just a second. Carissa with a follow-up question. Can the instructions to the title company, such as pay at closing, be included on the BBA? Barbara?
Yeah.
Okay. Natalie, how do we handle the existing listing agreement stating they will pay a commission? Do we explain that we now don't have to pay a buyer, though now the buyer's commission said that they
I think the listing agreements that offer compensation are still effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no reason not to still pay compensation, guys. It only changed. We had to put $1 on there before, well, at least $1 to put it on MLS. Now we don't have to put $1. So their requirement only changed by $1 to put it on MLS. I still expect people to pay commissions, and you should too. Okay, next, Vivian, why do people expect us to work for free and now with no promise of payment at closing? Just so you know, I asked Dan that. I think that's going to be a once a year thing for a large firm like us. Once a year that the buyer is going to try not to pay you guys. I think the rest of the time a lot of times going to be paid by the seller. A lot of times it's going to be paid through their loan. I think a lot of times it's going to be negotiated through concessions. And a lot of times buyers just going to pay it because they know they have to pay it and they don't want to get sued. The same reason you think any of your sellers are happy about paying 5 or 6% commission? They'd love to back out of it, but they know they get sued and lose. So they don't. So I mean, people are going to sign things and they're going to pay. You guys just need to take it very matter of factly when you have them sign the buyer. This is how we get paid. This is our transaction. Tracy,
I think sellers are still going to offer compensation. That's the only way to really move their property. The only change is that it can't be on the multiple listing. It can't be an offer of compensation. Like the lawsuit allows them to put in their website that we're offering 3%. So before I would show someone a property, I would call the listing agent to see what the compensation is.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to get to Debbie now, and then we'll get to the other chat question. Go ahead, Debbie.
Okay, so, and I'm looking for verbiage here because first off, it's just wrong that I could go list a property for 5% commission and now say I'm keeping it all and there's no buyer's commission. So let me state whoever came up with these rules truly did not understand the real estate industry. But besides that, if I sign a buyer's broker agreement, there's a couple of wrinkles. One is I can't put a set percentage in there and I need verbiage around how I alter that percentage. So I want to say the buyers are required to pay my fee is at least 3%, and I will go for the sellers for the majority of that. And if I do not, you're required to pay the difference. That's clause number 1. Clause number 2 I need is if the builder is offering 4.5% commission, then my fee is the full 4.5% commission, and you are not required to pay any of it. So how do we no buyer's going to sign an agreement if they don't know how much it's going to cost them. I'm sorry, guys, it's not going to happen. I would never do it. And when you leave something open-ended like that, you will get the lawsuit. So we need specific verbiage of how to write the buyer's broker agreement. And, another lady last week, Ryan brought up, well, what if they're not offering 3%? What if they're only offering 2%, which happens on more expensive properties? And I want to waive for my buyer who's already signed a 3% agreement, having to pay the extra 1% because we get into relations with these people. They become friends, they become family. We don't necessarily want to get the extra 1%. We need 3 different clauses now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at paragraph 7 under the compensation, and it states, you could be a dollar amount or a percentage of the purchase price. So all I can say, according to the lawsuit, you can't get paid more than what you've agreed in the offer in the buyer's agreement. So for your example, if you're going to a builder that's paying 4.5%, you need to enter it into a separate buyer's agreement for that particular transaction and indicate that you will be paid 4.5% from the builder.
Okay, so
you'll be paid 4.5% no matter what, either from the seller, but since the builder is offering it here, you will get 4.5% from the seller. So you're going to have to adjust or maybe do different broker buyer agreements depending on the offer of compensation, because if someone is offering 5% and you have an agreement that only pays you 2%, you probably want to do a new agreement so you can get the full 5%.
Right, which means the agreement is not effective at the point at which we work with the buyers and start showing them properties. So good luck enforcing that.
No,
okay?
no. Last night they also came out with a modification to
showing agreement.
Yeah, modification to the bill to the BBA also.
Okay.
They came out with a modification to it, Debbie. So that means it was in force the whole time. You're just changing one thing of it. One of the terms. You absolutely cannot do it. I think we're going to see bonuses go away from builders because of this. They are on every form that they've released, even ones who aren't even related to this. It says buyer's broker may not receive more than what is stated in the compensation area. So you cannot get a bonus. You cannot get the 4.5% instead of the whatever. I think it's a great question though. We don't want to be writing verbiage for all this stuff because you can't do that. One of the things though that you brought up was great, and I did want to talk to Dan about this as well. And that is, how do we waive for some clients and not waive for others? And is that going to be an issue at any point that we put 3% on everything? Sometimes we get 2.5, sometimes we get 3, sometimes we get 2. And some people we want to chase for that extra amount, and some people we don't want to chase for that extra amount. What do we? And I've had agents, and I'm sure she's on here right now, successfully put 4% or a $7,000 minimum because the guy was looking at $175,000 condos. And she did 4% and she did 7,000, and she's got both of those got signed and she got paid at those rates. Yeah. So people will sign these things. That is, now she couldn't get more than that if they were offering more than that. But how do you decide sometimes to waive those and sometimes not if we put 3% on everything and sometimes we get 2.5 and sometimes we get 2?
It's a business decision. Sometimes, it happens all the time. In order to get the deal done, some agents reduce their commission. It's just a business decision. As far as the commission amount, that's really not regulated. The only thing, and I'm not sure why they did this in the lawsuit, they just say you can't get paid more than what's in the buyer's agreement. Right.
Okay. So one of the things she was asking also kind of roundabout, I guess, is can I tell how do we tell them that we're going to pursue the sellers for this money? Can we just, obviously that can be something we explain to them.
You're going to pursue the seller if they made that offer of compensation in the MLS. If they made an offer, they told you they would pay that.
Right. No. I'm saying we're only going to pursue properties for them if the seller is offering.
Okay.
Can we do that? And that's kind of a question that was asked in chat as well. Can we only pursue properties?
I don't know if you can limit what you're going to show the buyers only to people offering compensation. You can tell your buyer that, but if they want to see properties that are not being offered compensation, they're going to have to either pay you or they're going to have to see the property on their own. You're not going to work for free.
What if they absolutely can't afford it? They're FHA. They need 3.5% back they don't have they have $2,000 to their name.
But you're going to have to negotiate with the seller to see whether they'll reduce the price in order them to pay you, or negotiate a deal where the seller agrees to pay a commission.
Right. But so I talked to a listing agent. I've got a buyer in that situation. I talked to a listing agent and they say absolutely not, no concessions. They don't want to pay commission. They did this whole thing. They waited until August to list their property because they didn't want to pay anything, and they're dead set against it. And so why would I show my buyer that? I wouldn't show them that property. I wouldn't show them any property they can't afford.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
Just like that. If they can't afford it, don't show them the property. He's going to wind up not being able to market that property because no one's going to show no one works for free.
Right.
And nobody's going to show that property unless they have a buyer that's willing to pay them a commission, or he's willing to cough up some money or share part of his commission.
Because they legally owe that money. It's not just me being tough. They legally owe me that money because they signed a buyer brokerage agreement before I showed them anything.
Yeah. That's the whole reason why you need the buyer's broker agreement, to secure your compensation.
Okay, Robin, you might be on mute. Robin, okay, your hand's down. You might be on mute if you're trying to talk. Rakesh.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So question I have looks like it's probably already answered. In the buyer brokerage agreement, we can't put something like minimum 2.5% or more if offered by the buyer seller. we can't put anything like that. It has to be specific number.
Yes.
Yes, you can't get more than that number, and you can't put a range.
Okay.
And so that's why I said I think bonuses are going to go away. There's no reason for builders to offer them anymore, except that if you do get that chance, you can go and modify your buyer's brokerage agreement. That form came out yesterday. You guys all got an email from Florida Realtors. Those of you who are realtors got an email from Florida Realtors, and they introduced 3 new forms: a showing form and some other revision, and then a modification. Sunaina.
Oh yeah.
Sunaina, you might be on mute if you're trying to
Yeah.
talk.
Okay,
Pardon
this applies even for commercial, all the commercial deals also?
No, not really. It still applies. You can't put an offer of compensation in the MLS.
Okay, but most of the commercial deals are either on LoopNet, Crexy, other websites, so,
Only applies to MLS property, Sunaina.
okay. Another question I had is if I'm doing a home and I have a buyer's agreement signed, and people do this all day long, they'll sign a buyer's agreement with me, and then if they sign with somebody else, and they had some issue with me, they go with the other one, so mine is not valid anymore?
No, it's absolutely valid. That's why you want to have a buyer's agreement, to protect you from that very situation. Yes, I see it all the time when I do arbitration hearings. That
Okay,
buyers
so
behave
but they
badly.
could be signing with another person, another realtor also, which I may not know.
Doesn't matter. If they
Okay.
buy a property according to this contract,
Okay,
and you're still within your time period or protection period, well, protection period is different. If you're still within your time frame, they have to pay you a commission regardless of who they use. That's what's the beauty of the buyer's agreement. They can't do that. They're contractually obligated to pay you, even if they use somebody else. If you're still if you're still within the time period of your buyer's agreement, think about it as a listing. Same situation.
okay, one more question I have, because we use the forms for commercial contract from, what is that website? It's not on the top of my head. So we have to make our own commercial contracts, or we can use the same ones which we have been using?
You can use whatever contract you want. They don't regulate contracts.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sunaina. Christina.
Hey, okay, so I don't think I'm liking the answer that I'm getting, but I'm gonna try to clarify.
I get that a lot.
Sure, I bet. Okay, so I, previously I had put, hey, my fee is X percentage, and I will pursue the seller in the event the seller does not pay. I said I will only charge the buyer XYZ percentage, which was less than the original percentage. Is that considered range and not allowed?
I'm a little confused. So, what I'm saying is you can't have a range in your buyer's agreement. You can't say, I'll
Right.
get 3% if the seller pays it, but only 2% if the buyer pays it.
Which is exactly what I'm saying. So I can't
Yeah.
specify, I can't do anything like that. I mean, I can always, which is silly to me because it's like, I still always, like you said, it's a business decision. I can choose at the end, and I do wonder about liability when it comes to protected classes. Like, ultimately it is a business decision, and I know commissions aren't regulated, but so I can choose to say, okay, I'm Mr. Builder, I'm charging Mr. Builder 10%, but if my customer I'll charge you 8%. I can still choose to reduce it, but I just can't put that in writing. So they have to just sort of take our word for it, or be willing to pay. Okay. And then I do wonder about
the only thing I can say for certainty is you can't get paid more than you agreed. If in your buyer's agreement, your buyer was going to pay you 8%, but the seller is offering 10%, you can only get 8%. You can't get what the seller's offering 10%. You're bound by what you agreed to in your buyer's agreement.
Yeah, if I have a loyal customer, it's a repeat customer, and they end up on the hook for it though, and I want to reduce it, I can reduce it. I just can't put that in. I can't.
Yeah,
but I can't put that in writing.
Well, no, because you're bound by it. If you put it in writing that it's going to be reduced, that's the max you can get.
Okay.
Couldn't you just fill out a new buyer broker's agreement at that point for the reduced price?
Yeah.
Modification. Modification, please.
Sorry,
Oh, okay.
modification. Yeah.
Okay, so we could modify. Okay.
That's a good idea. That's a great idea because I think there's going to be constant changing of compensation. There's going to be, everyone's going to have a different way of offering compensation.
So I wanted to share also, my friend is on a different, larger franchise, national kind of brokerage, and they had a Zoom the other day, and I guess what they were saying is that, oh God, now I'm losing my train of thought. Something like where they were saying in terms of not showing properties, that they were going to provide that as an option on the buyer broker agreement, saying, hey, check here if you do not wish to see in the, like the instance that Ryan was describing where somebody just doesn't have the funds or what have you, they can choose in writing to say, don't show me properties that aren't offering to pay your compensation.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a good idea.
yeah. So that's it. Okay, so
That way,
I guess
you're not doing a disservice to your client. They're making it very clear. I can't afford to pay you. So if someone is not offering compensation, I'm not interested in that property.
So we can write in additional terms that buyer does not wish to see properties where they would have to come out of pocket to pay the 3%.
Right.
Okay. All right. I know some of us do that on our listing agreements because you get all these lowball offers when you list something that seller does not wish to see offers that are under 80% of asking price, stuff like that.
yes.
So that way you're not required to forward all these lowball waste of time offers. So there you go.
Question.
Let's hold on. Mary.
Yes. I have two questions. Is this a mandatory form? Do we have to have a buyer's agreement?
It's not mandatory by Florida law. It's a realtor agreement.
So we don't have to have one. If they refuse to sign and we just show them ones that the sellers are given compensation, we'd be all right?
I can tell you be all right as far as a license standpoint, but I don't know civilly.
Okay.
If you'd be all right, if there would be, and because this is supposedly the resolution to resolve any antitrust issues. So,
Okay.
if
Stellar
I'm
said
not
that
sure how
was
the
not
realtors
right.
are going to enforce
But
this.
Ryan was shaking his head
It's
no.
not all right. It's not all right.
Okay.
You can't do that. They've
So
got
we
to
have to
sign-
have a buyer's agreement, even if it says they refuse to sign, so we will only show them properties where the seller is
that you can do.
offering
You can do.
compensation.
You can do that. But Mary, also, this is not for your commercial deals. This is only for stuff that's on.
Right. Okay. And I have another question. What if we have a buyer's agreement and they say they're going to compensate us, and then the seller is compensating? What do you do then?
You can't get more than what you agreed to.
Okay, so the seller doesn't have to compensate us.
No,
Just
I would let the buyer. I would let your buyer get the seller's money and let the buyer not compensate.
Yeah.
We can do that?
Yeah, that's like normal. You're still going to do that all the time.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
It's not going to change as much as everybody's making it sound like it's going to change.
I really do like that idea of not showing property that there's no offers of compensation. That'll be very easy for a buyer to understand, to say, listen, you don't have to pay me anything. I'm just going to go show you properties that where people were offering compensation, and that will be like the same as it always was.
I think that's going to keep them from just looking on Zillow and calling the listing agent. I mean, I don't know, but I sort of see that happening when they don't have the funds and they don't want to sign a buyer's agreement. I mean, if I was a buyer without any money, I would go on Zillow and call the listing agent to show it to me.
But you guys do more. I mean, there's more to just showing them property. Who's going to negotiate the contract? Who's going to do all the things you guys do to get the deal done?
But if the listing agent has compensation for both sides, then she's going to do it, or she or he will do it.
The licensee's going to do it. Yeah. You guys are going to rep. So I think I think that's an easier pill to swallow for buyers that don't have the money and are not used to buying, selling, paying a buyer's commission.
Yeah.
I think they'll be okay if you explain to them this exclusive buyer brokerage agreement, just, giving me the authority to represent you. You do not have to pay me anything. I'm only going to show you properties where they're offering to pay my commission.
Okay.
Yeah, Mary, things aren't going to change as much as everybody is thinking the sky is falling, et cetera, because listing agents are still going to explain that there are people out there who won't look at properties that where you don't offer commission. And if they do have two competing properties and you're offering it and they're not, then they're going to go with the other one. So I think it won't be as bad as you got. What's going to take is more communication. You're going to have to call listing agents before you show properties to ask what you're offering.
Absolutely.
And listing agents are going to have to answer their phone.
And we might have to show some of our own listings more than we were.
Well, and that's okay.
Yeah, which is fine. And I really think sellers are used to paying a commission. So I don't know. I think most of them will compensate so their house can be shown.
One thing I think is real important, they're going to be allowed to put in their websites that they're offering compensation, but you want to get something in writing, formalizing that they're going to pay you X commission. Because there's not going to be any, like in the MLS, it was mutual cooperation. That's gone. So you have to get something ironclad. Even though they offered in their website, you probably want something in writing indicating that they're going to pay you.
So before we show a property where the seller is supposedly paying us our compensation, we have to get the seller or the listing agent to sign saying that they are offering.
I would say before showing, but before you go under contract.
Okay.
It's kind of like in the commercial side, that's how they do it. They get an agreement that they'll get compensated because there's no offer of usually.
Right. And so now, guys, we went over a couple of weeks ago the new forms for the sellers to send you, the selling listing agent to send you, or you to send to them, guaranteeing that whatever commission they told you on the phone or on their website guarantees it, so they can't switch it later or say, "Oh, I never told you that." So those forms are out as well. We went over them a couple of weeks ago. It's on our YouTube channel if you missed it. Let's go with who's next. Lori. Lori. You might be on mute. There you go.
I was on mute. Sorry. Okay, I just wanted to double check that if I find a listing from my buyer that is offering more than what I originally contracted with my buyer as my commission, I can have them sign an addendum to the original commission that for this particular property, the commission owed to me will be, instead of 3%, 4%.
Yes.
That's the modification. There's a form made for that, the modification, because this is going to happen all the time.
Okay, and it'll have the particular property's address on it so that there is no question.
Exactly. That's what the modification's for.
Okay, very good. And actually, that's something that we could use every time we show a builder's property when they're offering more.
I know.
100%. Yes.
Okay. This whole thing sucks.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dan. We have some young, crazy people in our brokerage there. All right. Yes.
And some old crazy people.
I'm in real estate.
Yeah.
I'm in my 41st year. I'm not that young. Okay.
Yeah, I want to know, with this change, right? I mean, a lot of people I have seen say, okay, I mean, all we need is really have the contract in place, right? Agreement, etc. So then do you see like a situation where people are doing that on a flat fee, basically? Who can sign, who can really basically facilitate the property sale with outside agents, like licensed agent? Anybody?
No, I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you saying that anybody can do this? Anybody can represent a buyer now and they don't have to be licensed?
Yeah, I'm saying like so if people as a buyer, you obviously can buy the property, but if the buyer want to represent themselves, right? Can they do that?
They can represent themselves. Yes, they always could.
Okay, so there is
but not anybody can represent a buyer. You have to have a real estate license to represent a buyer. That's Florida law.
Sure, but I'm trying to see a scenario where basically there may be these new online sites or these companies come in who say, okay, you can check all the information online, etc. And you can yourself your own agent basically for every buyer.
I think there's going to be different models. I mean, somebody may just charge, I'll be your buyer's broker. I'll find you properties and you do everything else. And I charge a, $1,000 fee for that.
Mm-hmm.
There may be people who will offer more services because there's more to just finding them the property. There's a lot more. You negotiate, you do the contract, and you do the follow through all up until closing. So you, as buyers agents, really need to sell your services and explain to the buyers you do more than just locate the property.
Right. But not everybody appreciate that, even though we do all that. But it's like that.
That's going to be your new job, is to convince people they need your services.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
Sure.
Yeah. That's the same thing. Dan, do you ever have to do that? Convince people they need your services? That's the same thing every business. Every business does that.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about Dan's services a little bit later. Dan, I'm going to go through chat. I'm sorry, Winnie, Levette, Ted, we'll get to you guys in just a second. I'm going to go through chat. If we have a buyer who can't afford, okay, we talked about that. Do we need writing if the seller is offering compensation? Yes. So that's the form that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Check that out. It was the seller, whatever it is, selling agent, listing agent agreement to pay buyer's brokerage. But it's on there and it just says what the property is and how much they're paying. With this new rule, it's a good question that we've gone over with lenders as well. With this new rule, can buyer finance a buyer commission? If so, can that be done as a seller concession? Absolutely, yes, both. So VA has come out now allowing buyers to take a concession to pay this. And FHA is, I don't know if it's official yet or not, but they're raising their amount that you can take as a concession in order to pay this. And you will turn these forms into the lenders. It'll all be part of saying this is what the buyer is going to be paying for. So you'll give them to the lenders if the seller's not offering, or even if the seller is offering, to show so these forms are going to go to the lenders all the time. Later on in this chat, I just saw somebody ask that, are these enforcement? Yeah, they're enforced because you can't get a loan. You're going to have to give this to the lender every single time, regardless, because it's part of what the buyer owes at closing, or even if it came from the seller. Give them a credit close. Can we put the seller's compensation and the buyer's realtor in an app like Showing Time? No. You cannot. You cannot use anything related to the MLS to do this. Lots of people had ideas to make these. In fact, we did as well. Is to make these sites where realtors could post their own listing, kind of a data collection site. They just announced they made this big article that they're cracking down on that as well. They're not going to.
You can't have your own separate MLS.
Right. So if Dan started his own MLS where you guys could all go on there and pay $50 a year to put your listings in there and say that we're offering 2.5 for this one and 3 for that one, Dan would get sued and lose his butt. All right. Malvis, could we have multiple agreements at the same time? I don't know what that means, but with different buyers, yes. Okay, I think sellers will pay as a result of market, yes. If buyer wants to add the agreed buyer's side commission when not offered by seller to contract amount, does that now change the amount listed price 400, offer 390, no buyer side offering? So now do I raise the offer amount and put commission in terms? You can do that as a concession, yes. You can't put commission in the terms, but you can put concession in there. Seller says it's required. Who's going to know if we have a BBA before showing properties? How is this going to be enforced? So nobody's going to know except for you, but you're going to have to give it to the lender. You're going to have to give it to the title company to get paid. So you need to have it. So none of these are really Dan questions. I think that moving forward is a great idea to have the conversation with your buyer about compensations. Of course, yeah, you're going to have to. If buyers want to see a property showing no compensation, they will possibly just call sellers themselves. Yeah, but they have a buyer brokerage agreement with you. They still owe you a commission. So we went over the buyer brokerage agreement last week. It is very clear that if they find a property, I think it covered everybody in the world, themselves or brought to attention by the broker, or they find it on their own, or any other person, which is everybody in the world.
It's just like the listing agreement. If they sell the property on their own, they still owe you.
Right. If their cousin comes to town and wants to buy it, they still owe you commission. Listing entries, listing agents and sellers can advise their willingness to possession without mentioning commission. It's a way to communicate to other agents. Absolutely, and I think that's concession. So Ms. Lucero is talking about the concession field that they've added. Yeah, that's going to be a common place where you're going to see 2.5 or 3% concessions offered. Now, that is not final. That is not something like before with the offer of compensation where you could take them to the board and say, you offered 3%, you didn't want to pay. That's a concession. It still has to be negotiated on the contract. Is the seller able to change that compensation they said they offer? And that's why we do that form. Do we have to do anything with listing agreements we have in place now that offer compensation? You're still offering compensation. They've changed it to where it used to say before, if you do not offer cooperating broker compensation, you can't put it on MLS. They dropped that as soon as this lawsuit was settled. So it's already off of the form that they can now offer no compensation. But they're still going to, if you do a good job as a listing agent, or, you know, some of them are just going to be dead set on not offering it, but they're going to get asked to offer concessions instead. Their property, I think it's important that you guys point this out as well. Your comps and your appraisal and all that is based off of former sales where they did pay 5 or 6% commission. So that extra 3%, you didn't just make that. People are going to want it somehow. Regarding getting something in writing before going under contract, is agent confirming in writing legally enough to protect you, or did it mean something seller signed by the seller directly paying? No, that's their Frederick. They're putting what their listing agreement says is what they better put in that writing to you that they're offering, because they cannot offer more or less than whatever their listing agreement says. Okay, we'll get you, Tina, email me or Michelle for the YouTube thing. It was on your welcome email. It's on the bottom of your welcome email, and that's the new one. To clarify, last question answer was the modification can increase the compensation originally agreed. Yes, Dan's saying yes. That's what the modification is for. Same thing you do to a listing agreement. You can change any term on there without canceling and starting a new one. So they don't get out of the original one. It's just a modification to it. May we write in realtor remarks on the listing, buyer's agent welcome? I mean, you're welcome. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Buyer, sure you can. I met with the same buyer. Okay, that's Malvis asking, can you have multiple agreements with the same buyer? No, unless it's one-time showing agreement. Then of course you can. Can we make it? You don't need one. Is the point? It's going to be for a period of time, and then when that one runs out, you can either modify it to extend it, or you can. So if you have somebody and you only did them for a week, and you think they're close to going under contract on something, whatever, you can extend it. But once they get under contract, it can expire, and you don't have to worry about it. Just like a listing agreement goes under contract the day before it was going to expire, you're still going to get commission as long as that one closes. Can we
You
make
might be referring to different commission amounts, like you have 3, one for, you know.
No, you have to modify it. No, absolutely not. Can we make a statement in any app that simply says the seller is offering a buyer commission without an amount? Not on any, no, not on any MLS related app. Will seller's agent be required to have a buyer fill out the buyer's form prior to showing their own listing? Yes. Yes, that's going to be a showing agreement. That's the one that came out yesterday. That's going to be a showing agreement. Buyer signs an agreement. The realtor will only show them properties that offer compensation. Buyer finds a perfect home, but no compensation is offered. Buyer calls listing agent without letting realtor know and buys the house. In this case, they don't owe anything to buyer's agent. Of course they do. If they have an agreement with you, yes, they still owe it. That's any way they find a house. It's written in that agreement. We went over it last week. If you want to go look at the YouTube about last week, we went over that agreement, and absolutely any person on earth shows them a property or they find it themselves, they still owe you. It means seller will pay buyer's commission. That's what I meant by buyer's agent welcome. You can mean that, but you can't say that. As long as it's buyer's agent welcome doesn't mean anything. Of course, that's fine to put in there. Just be very careful. Don't skirt around this. Just have them call you. Don't put on there, call me for compensation. Don't put anything about compensation.
No, they'll probably strike it, the MLS, the folks that.
I hope they strike it and don't just fine you.
Yeah.
If a buyer requests a seller to pay buyer's agent commission and seller negotiated for lower, can we hold buyer to balance of original buyer's agreement? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. So Dan will be familiar with this. We have been always prohibited to write, not in commercial, we're not prohibited. The MLS is always, the boards have always prohibited us from talking about commission in the contract, because the contract's agreement between the buyer and the seller. So we weren't supposed to put in there 3% commission paid to buyer's broker, Florida Realty Investments. We weren't supposed to put that in there. But I was surprised, Dan, because on one of these broker webinars, they put that you can now write that in there, because if the buyer and seller try to negotiate you out of it, a concession made to pay the buyer's agent, or that they're going to do that, because you can still write that in there, that the the
You
seller.
can write it in there. It's just because you're just a third party beneficiary to the contract. You're not a party to the contract. So that's the reason why they always said don't put it in there. Rely on the listing agreement that you had to enforce compensation. But nothing prohibits you from doing that.
Well,
I don't know if it would be enforceable.
Well, the theory was that they could always negotiate you out of it, but now they both separately owe their agents.
Yeah,
So-
because now you're going to have a buyer's agreement that says they're going to pay you X no matter what,
Right.
either from the seller or from their pocket, and you're going to have the listing agreement that's going to be the same.
So they can try to negotiate you out of it if they talk to each other directly, but they can't. But they're not, or even if they don't talk to each
They
other,
still-
but
they
they
can still
can't
bid
absolve
on these
themselves of
things.
owing.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits of having the exclusive buyer's broker agreement signed, because now they're held to it. And also, I think it's going to eliminate these procuring clause issues because they're going to know who the agent that has the exclusive buyer's broker is the procuring clause, is the agent. You're not going to get into these fights like we did in the past. And you're not going to get these buyers who use you, find the property, and then go to their cousin.
Right.
If they do that, okay, but we're still going to sue you on this buyer's broker agreement you signed.
I think that's going to be the most common thing. Did you notice, Dan, how much more broker friendly this buyer brokerage agreement is than it was before? There were a couple of examples of places in there that's a lot more. In fact, there's not a place for the consumer now. I saw that all the buyer. So they sent out a red line yesterday. I don't know if you looked at the.
I haven't seen that now.
Where they stroke the. I mean, we all noticed that it all says consumer now instead of buyer, and I got a lot of questions from the agents about that last week.
There's a reason I don't know. I got to talk to Marcia why they put the word consumer.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference to me, but maybe it's some
it
kind
has
of
something
agency.
to do with leasing on rental properties, I think, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe it does. So, but there's no place for the consumer to terminate on here. It only says that the broker may agree to conditionally terminate this agreement. That's one place they tightened it up. They tightened it up a lot. It's a lot better than the old from the broker standpoint. From the
they try to make it try to protect you guys.
Yeah, if we're going to make us use it, then we do. Guys should have always been using. I've been preaching to them to always use it, but
And it's a very strong protection period, and no matter how you find the property, you're going to pay us.
Yeah, they've tightened it up a lot. All right, let's get back to the questions on the hands raised. Winnie, you're up.
Hi, I have a question. If the listing agent that they put around, like they promised for the concession, right? So now they put on the listing agreement, the seller's agent need to put concession instead of commission, right?
Don't use the word instead of. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's the answer. Yeah, you can put instead of.
Okay.
They were very clear, Winnie, that it's not a replacement of they're trying not to get in trouble too with the whole Department of Justice thing. So they've made it very clear it is not a replacement for that. It has nothing to do with that. You guys have been offering concessions for years. People have been asking for concessions for years, forever. So it is not a replacement for, I didn't mean to make it sound like that. They were very, very clear. It was written all over everything. It'll probably be on there, on the form, when they release it, which is going to be really soon if it hasn't already.
Right.
They add those fields. It's going to be on there. This is not a replacement for compensation.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with it theoretically.
Yeah, it doesn't involve.
I shouldn't use the language like that, but I know that the listing agent can offer the concession.
Yeah. Well, the seller can, yes.
The seller, that they represent the seller can offer the concession. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And I will have to talk to you.
Concession is a lot different than a commission. And it has nothing to do with your compensation.
Okay, concession should be they offer the closing costs and closing costs.
Right. Nothing to do with your commission. Nothing about your compensation.
Right. So I do have a four listing. I do have 4 listings for selling right now. So that I need your help to see how I can properly set up the agreement. This is from the same.
Are they current listings with offers of compensation?
Yeah.
It can be the same listing. You just can't put that offer of compensation in the MLS. That's the only difference.
So just don't put anything.
There won't be a field for it.
Okay.
And you can't write it. You cannot write it in any remarks. Cannot write it.
Okay, I see.
But if someone calls you, or you have a website, you can indicate that you're offering compensation to the buyer.
See, so I need to create my own website to doing that. Okay. Another question is, let's say they do offer some, let's say, compensation. They offer, like, let's say they offer 2.5% from the seller side. Now I have my agreement with the buyer saying that I put 3%. Now there's some difference. And I get 2.5%. At that time, I need to rewrite the amendment saying that I don't charge the buyer. Or I just like it.
You can agree to waive
2.5%.
Yeah, you can agree. You know, you can tell your buyer, even though you're contracted to pay me 3, I'm only going to charge you 2.5 in this transaction because that's what the seller paid me.
Right.
It's your decision.
Yeah. Should I do a modification of the documents for them to sign, or I don't have to do anything?
No.
No, I don't need to do anything because it's not the 3%.
Yeah, you may want to tell the title company that you're not enforcing that 0.5% on the buyer side.
I see, but the seller side will put that as a credit. Okay, I see. Okay, thank you.
And you don't want to do a modification for that, Winnie, in case that contract falls through, and then they can find another property that does offer you 3%. And now you've modified to 2.5, and you're going to have to go back to the buyer and say, "Oh, we're modifying back to 3." It's just not worth having that conversation. It's not a fun conversation.
Okay,
and you'll come off as a hero when you tell them, "Listen, I'm going to waive my 0.5%."
Okay. Well, yeah, I waive my 0.5%. I should say that, right? Okay.
There's absolutely, guys. There's absolutely ways to create customer loyalty and stuff here too. It's a really good thing to do. Livette.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, good morning. I have 2 questions here quickly. So the first one, part of it was answered. So the end part to that is if a buyer's agreement, let's say the buyer agreed to pay me 3% and the seller agreed to pay me another 3%. I know I can only get 3%, but at that point, do I need to modify the buyer's agreement?
You can.
I can, and the other option would just leave it alone?
Yeah, get your 3% and that's it.
Yep.
And then negotiate, hopefully for your buyer's benefit, the sales price down 3% since they're not going to be paying it.
Awesome. The other question is, I have a possible listing and it's close to the time when all this would be in effect. So what do I do about the agreement? If I put it on the MLS before the time, do I not offer a commission? Do I still offer a commission? What's happening to listing that's close to the end of this agreement?
Until it changes, it's all status quo. Once it changes, you will not be able to physically or manually write in the MLS that there is an offer. That's not going to exist in the MLS. Even if you wanted to, you cannot put it in the MLS. But your listing agreement can still say that you're offering compensation. There's nothing changing in that regard. The only thing changing is you just can't advertise it in the MLS.
Okay.
It's not that complicated if you think about it. Everything's remaining the same. All that's happening is that you cannot put it in the MLS, the offer of compensation, and 2, that you need a buyer's agreement.
Okay. So everything remains the same until.
Yep. They'll zap it. So if you put it in on August 15th and you put it in at 3% commission to a cooperating broker, you're offering 3%. They're going to zap it. That field will disappear on the 17th or whatever dates they make it that final thing. So if there's a field there for it, you can put it in. If there's not, there's not. But never ever talk about it in any of the remarks. Do not do that. They will zap you for a big fine. I forget what it was, but $1,500 or something like that.
That's what they're doing? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. If you write it in the compensation field right now, it's got to be gone by, I think it's August 6th, or maybe it was now, like right around now. So July 23rd. There's so many different dates and stuff, Dan.
Because I always thought this was going to happen in the middle of July, and it keeps on getting pushed back.
Yeah. Well, I think they're stuck with August 17th. Now it's been August 17th for a while now. But yeah, remember the beginning, we thought July 15th we were.
Teller will tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Ted, you may be on mute if you're trying to talk. Okay. Ted will come back to you. Christina.
Hey, okay, I got a few. So in terms of somebody calls me on my listing and they want to go look at one property, or, you know, I get a lead and I saw, I think Zillow was doing something where it was like a one property, or we can do something like for just one property or for a couple properties. Is there a separate form for that, or?
I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to do. Just
She doesn't
Somebody
want to do
calls me. Somebody calls me on my listing. They don't know me. They don't want to commit to maybe they don't feel like committing to a whole agreement like that. Is there a form? Does Florida Realtors have a form for just like a single property showing?
There's a showing agreement that came out yesterday.
Okay. So, in terms of ensuring compensation, is there a form? Like, I know you were saying it's best to get something. I know, Dan, you were saying it's best to get something in writing. Like, let's say we're going under contract, we're getting the contract executed. Is there a form specifically for that? And if so, are we, is it going to be between us and the seller, or is it still going to be like broker to broker in terms of any compensation agreement for the buyer's agent?
honestly, I don't know. I know they have a commission form, and I don't know. I don't know the details. Ryan, do you know? I don't know off the top of my head.
The commission forms came out a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
That just guarantee what the listing agent is offering for a cooperating broker.
And
So
it'll
they'll be between.
executed by the listing agent.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not by the seller. Listing agent's going to have to sign. Guys, you guys are going to have to sign these all the time for people. When you have a listing, they're going to send you. You're going to. So, Christina, Mary calls you about your listing on 123 Oak Street. What are you offering for compensation? And you say 2.5%. And she says, well, I believe you, but I'm going to send you this form anyway. And if you don't mind signing that and putting in writing what you just told me. And that's all the form does. Has the address and what they're offering. And see you later. Now you've got that. And now we can show it to the buyer and have them.
Yeah, because in the past, it was implied based on your participation in the MLS. That was the agreement that you would cooperate with another. But now you got to get it in writing.
Right.
So we can have sign writers or social media posts or something on our website stating that we're offering compensation, right?
Yes.
Can we do that like on a Zillow or something like that? I'm assuming we could put it in the, no?
No, I don't think you can do it on Zillow, but you can do it on your own website, because I think Zillow's not going to want to do that because they're going to get charged with antitrust.
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, they're a broker. They feed now like we do. They IDX.
So if we get to the point where, I mean, I think this is going to be a very rare occurrence, but let's say we get to the point where we've got a buyer broker agreement, you know, and they're going to be responsible for our fee, you know, as the buyer. And let's say they get to closing and they say, I'm not going to do that. And, you know, we send over whatever we have to title, which, by the way, I don't know why, but the board was telling us not to do that. I don't know. So would we be able to do, I mean, is it going to hold up the closing? Would we be able to do like a lien on the property, like a trade would, if they don't get paid?
No, you can't do liens unless you have written permission.
So does this preclude the closing from happening? Let's say, you know, we're entitled to a 3% compensation per our agreement. The buyer says no. I mean, does this stop the closing? What happens? Because I know,
I don't think
again,
it'll stop the closing. I think after the closing, you're going to have to sue the buyer. And that's a thing I'd have to look to see if once you sue the buyer, if you can put a lien on the property.
but that's what I'm wondering, because it's not, you know, with like the
It's going
listing.
to close. I think it's going to close, and then you're going to have to.
Yeah, Christine, we talked about this a little bit earlier. Dan said he's seen people try to get out of listing agreements before, try to not pay any commission at all, and they've been sued, and I'm sure they lost.
Right.
But sellers have gone to the closing table, reviewed the preliminary HUD, and said, I'm not signing. I'm not paying commission.
Right.
And people have to chase them for it, and I assume they get it, unless there's some kind of crazy circumstances.
And in that case, is Carissa gonna? Because it's ultimately Carissa, right? I mean, are you guys
which means Dan's gonna do it? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But Dan will do it then. In that case, if we've got the agreement and.
Yes.
Okay. I am curious. With the new MLS field, I feel like that's kind of like, I don't know. I feel like I almost don't want to. I mean, just my 2 cents. I feel like I almost don't want to mess with that because I feel like that's. You know, I don't know. I don't love that. And then I am curious if anybody has any knowledge or thoughts. I saw there's been some articles coming out in regards to a new suit between NAR and another listing website regarding clear cooperation, and that there was some indication from NAR that they might be doing away with clear cooperation. Curious if anybody had any insight on that. And ultimately, if we go Thompson broker, we don't have to do any of this, right? We just have to get our own forms.
No, we can use the forms. It's the problem with this is that it's MLS and it's association owned MLSs. So the problem that Thompson brokers are going to be the same. You can't put your compensation on MLS. MLS isn't going to let you. Thompson just means you're not a member of your local association, NAR and FAR. But you are a subscriber of the MLS, so you can't put it in the MLS. You still need the same things to get paid.
MLS is not going to let you do it. If you participate in the MLS, they are not going to let you do it.
Right, but in terms of any of the NAR rules, because it's not a law for the buyer broker. I don't know. I mean, for now, I'm seeing where I'm at exactly, but I am just curious if anybody has made the switch to Thompson broker. Because I mean, essentially, if you want to avoid that, any of the not allowing bonuses and all of that, I mean, you just be Thompson broker, right? So that was just my no.
That's not true. Nope. If you're MLS, you're using MLS, then you're using MLS.
Right, but in order to be you still need to have a buyer broker agreement if you're a Thompson broker?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So
if you're using the MLS, you're agreeing to comply with these terms.
Okay. But you could be a Thompson broker and not use the MLS and not comply with any of this.
Why would you be a Thompson broker if you're not using the MLS?
No, you wouldn't be, because everybody on a Thompson brokerage has to join. So we have a Thompson brokerage. Everybody on that Thompson brokerage has to join the MLS, just like everybody on our board member brokerage has to join the board and the MLS. We also have a referral brokerage where you don't have to join anything. So
what is the significance between the two? What are the reasons people are switching to Thompsons? That's
First of all, it saves you right now $650 to $700 a year, which is probably going to be more and more and more. And the reasons to not do it are dwindling. You can use all the forms.
I have no comment.
Yeah. I try to keep my comments pretty tame. Yeah. But the reasons to not do it used to be that you couldn't call yourself a realtor, you couldn't use their forms, and some other nonsense. But now you can use the forms, and I don't know if you care about calling yourself a realtor. That's up to you, and that's your decision. But for $700 a year, I'll call you a realtor. Just send it to me. Okay, so let's go with Ted. Are you ready to ask a question, or did you do it in chat? Well, I guess you're not answering.
I found it. I figured it out.
Oh, okay. Well, your other picture has your hand up.
Sorry about that.
Okay, you figured it out. So you have a 3% buyer agreement, and the seller negotiates directly with the buyer for 2% commission. Do you have to accept this? No, you still get your 3%. You're still going to have to get it.
They're contractually obligated to pay you 3%.
Okay, so the seller can't negotiate us out of what we've agreed to with the buyer.
Nope.
Okay. Seems like we're going to be, in some cases, probably going to court a lot to chase after a commission, which could be aggravating. And I don't know. I just seems like a lot.
I'm wondering how my business is going to change. How many people are going to leave?
It just I'm sure it bothers everybody, but I mean, the attorneys out there, aren't they kind of like in this situation? Don't we all assume that you have to pay like a third of your winnings to an attorney? I mean, couldn't they just do this to any industry out there?
No, I wish I got a third of all my, but no, that's not. I mean, we offer different compensations. There's no mandatory 1/3. It's just that's the max you can charge under the bar rules.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Dan, I think I get this. Ted and I had the same thought because there was no mandatory. We did. Some people are doing 1% listings out there, and some people are doing 10% listings. So there's a little bit of everything. So yeah, I think we were just ripe for the picking.
You are the biggest trade group.
Yeah, for a class action suit, and it's just a bunch of lawyers made millions and millions.
Lots of money. Yeah, absolutely.
And the rules don't really help anybody.
That's the thing. It's never been set in stone. It's always been negotiable.
Right.
Yep.
They had to do $1. They had to do $1, and I think we should have been liable for $1 for everything because we made them do $1. That's all we've made them do is $1. All right, we're not gonna get into that. Let's get the people the information. Anthony.
Yes, so I was wondering about the new field for seller concessions that's going to be added in place of the commission compensation field. Can that be used for commissions, or is it
No.
strictly? No?
Absolutely not.
Well, what I meant was, I know it doesn't state that, but is a commission considered a concession or not at all?
It is, Dan. They said that you can put it in there now. That you can put that that it's going to be used for the compensation. They said that that you can do that.
Wait.
Not in the MLS. You absolutely cannot relate it in the MLS at all. But
Right.
they said that you can put in the contract that the seller's compensation will be used, or seller's concession will be used for buyers.
Okay.
And they are considering it a closing cost. As
Okay.
of now, that's what they've said. So yes, Anthony, yes, Anthony, but be very clear that you cannot relate at all on MLS concession to compensation, but on the contract, you can negotiate for that, and they will call it a closing cost, and they will consider it that for purposes of the loan. They will consider that for purposes of.
So it will be a seller concession to pay a portion of the buyer's commission.
Yes.
So in essence, the commission due to the buyer's agent, that could be considered a part of the concessions, or the money could be used towards that.
Yes, that's what they've said. Dan, I'm going to consult with Dan about this again later because it seems to be news. But I saw that on the webinar. That's why I was so surprised that they said you can write this stuff in contracts because they've never said.
When I first saw that a couple of weeks ago, to me, it is causing the same issue, because now can't you steer people to properties that are offering, oh, well, this seller's offering 5% concessions. That means you probably won't have to pay me any commission. It'll come from the seller.
Okay, so steering is they've gone on with a steering term, which, as Dan knows, steering from law is nothing like this kind of steering that we're talking about now, steering toward commission. But what we talked about earlier, Anthony, is if the buyer can't afford to pay it, you can put on there that we're not showing properties where the seller doesn't offer compensation or concessions to cover compensation, whatever you want to say.
Okay. But it just seems to me, you can still, as anyone that has access to MLS, you can say, oh, well, this person's offering 0 concessions, which means they're probably unlikely to want to pay a commission too. I mean, you can make assumptions, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I don't think that's going to be very accurate. I think if I signed a listing agreement with you, Anthony, and I told you we're going to offer 2.5%, 3%, yeah, of course, because you've explained to me that buyers don't want to look at it, blah, blah, blah. Then why would we offer concessions on top of that?
I think the reality is listing agents are still going to offer compensation because their houses are not going to sell without that, because that's what everyone's used to. And it's just a different way of putting it out there. But I think everything's going to remain the same. You just can't put it in the MLS.
Oh, another question I have is, everybody that has a current listing agreement, are we going to have to do a modification when this starts next month, or it would just not just, the commission will still be in the listing agreement we have already had signed, correct?
Right. It's the same thing. You're still offering compensation to anyone who brings you a buyer. The only difference is that you can't put it in the MLS. So your listing remains the same. You may need to get an amendment from your seller indicating that it's not going to be listed in the MLS anymore.
Is there still going to be
how they're going to address that? Is it be grandfathered in? You're in, or because part of your changes that you'll put this in the MLS and offer compensation in the MLS. When they change it, are they going to remove that offer compensation from the MLS? And do you need to get that modified from your seller so now they know it's not offered? You're still offering it on your website or whatever, but it's not being posted in the MLS.
Well, has the listing agreement changed?
That
or do we have new listing agreements that doesn't include the co-op commission? Or
yes, I'm sure they're coming. I don't know. Are they out yet?
Yeah, they'll still have co-op commission. You just can't put it on MLS.
It won't have a line saying it'll be posted in the MLS.
Okay, but it's still there in the listing agreement, just not published.
Correct. So Anthony, if I see your listing and I like it for my buyer, I'm going to call you and find out what that is, or I'm going to look on your website. If you can direct me to your website, I think that's still legal right now in the realtor remarks to say, check out my website, AnthonyWatsonTheRealtor.com, and I can go on there and see that.
Okay, thank you.
Tammy.
Hey, I'm in a noisy place. I had to move locations. Hey, I'm just making a comment. I would never put seller concession in the listing. I would always wait until I negotiate the deal. I would never talk to my seller about a concession at that point because you never know. You just don't know anything. So there's a good possibility they would when you go to negotiate the deal, but I don't know that I would discuss that at a listing appointment. Could be off. Am I off?
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's very fair, Tammy. And I think what you're going to see is a lot of realtors, and hopefully not you guys, who have 2.5% or 3%. You've talked your seller into a normal division of or more normal cooperating broker fee, and then you put the 2.5% or 3% for concessions, trying to be coded, that we're offering compensation. And I think that's a mistake, because if I see that as a buyer and I've got an FHA buyer or something, I'm going to say, and I'm going to call you, and Tammy's going to say, yeah, we're offering 3%. And I'm going to tell my buyer, they're offering 3% concession, and they're going to pay my fee. So, I mean, this looks great. And so, like, to Tammy's point, we're going to offer a contract that says both of those things. And now the seller is going to look at you like, I didn't say I would do 3%.
And now I'm paying 6% or whatever.
I'm paying 6%. Why are you telling people I'd pay this? So now I've got unrealistic expectations for my buyer, and that's just going to cause headache. Christina.
So, and I apologize, my service dropped out a couple times earlier. Somebody already covered this. In terms of, let's say there's, I'm going to go show 123 Main Street. I call, they say, well, the seller wants you to negotiate for commission. We're not offering any set amount. Okay, cool. I submit an offer, and I'm requesting that as a concession. Am I making any, what wording am I using? Am I just using, seller to contribute 6% towards buyer's closing costs and or prepaids? Am I just doing that, or is there any particular verbiage that you want us to use on the agreement?
No, I would think you keep it that way. This is the way you always handle concessions.
Okay, so it would just be written as a concession in the additional remarks. We would just do it like as we always do, and then we would have the form between broker to broker stating what our concession is. Well, at that point, I guess it's just a concession.
Broker to broker.
Yeah.
The broker's not promising you to pay. The seller's promising to give a concession, and then it's going to be your agreement with the buyer that they're going to use that concession to pay you.
Okay, and then we really want to avoid anything in realtor remarks like directing people to go anywhere, right? Like we just, they're just going to have to call us if they want to know. Like we don't, you know what I'm saying, right? I mean, like you broke up, but I know Ryan was saying something about, they can check our website, but we don't want to direct them to our website, right? Or is there any thought on that?
The lawsuit allows you to make offers of compensation on your website. I don't think Stella will allow you to put comments that indicates go to my website where we'll offer you compensations. They don't want to see
obviously
anywhere.
Gotcha, but okay.
But if someone calls you, you can tell them, go to, my offer of compensation is listed on my website. Take a look.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Let's get back to some questions here. Seller's agent before showing a home, or would be the seller's broker to buyer's broker? Seller's broker to buyer broker, Lori, is the answer to that. Talking about the compensation agreement. Bonnie, in regards to Christine's question, could we collect our percentage up front for the buyer's retainer that's credited back to the buyer at closing when they actually pay the commission? Dan, I wanted to ask you about this. I don't know if you saw the new retainer thing. It is, you don't get to choose if it's refundable or non-refundable. Now it's completely non-refundable.
Non-refundable.
And you can, it doesn't even say it can be put toward it can't be put toward the 3.5% or 2.5% or 3 or 2.5 or whatever percentage either. So that money is, and it's earned and payable, meaning it's released to the, so when we get it, we're going to get it. So let's say that Christina has someone and they pay $1,000 retainer up front. they're going to pay that to Florida Realty Investments. We can go ahead and turn it around to Christina, right? We don't have to hold that for anything.
No,
It's
you don't have to
earned
hold, I
already.
got that question. If you have to hold it in an escrow account or anything. No, it's earned money. It's not advanced commission. It's
So
earned money.
we don't even hold it. We just turn it around.
Okay. So
I
Ryan,
want to, let me check that because what I'm a little, so I know like when I get a retainer, I credit it towards your final bill. That retainer won't get credited towards the 3%?
Nope. Nope.
Okay.
This
So-
retainer is in addition to any compensation earned by broker.
Okay.
in order to protect our commission, what if we just charge the buyer 3% retainer and then said 0% at closing?
Because they have to pay you 3%.
What about getting a buyer to do that though?
Yeah, if you get them to do it, that's great.
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. What else we got? Per what being discussed about not being paid and Dan has to pursue is responsible for the legal cost to collect the monies. Dan, that would be, those are paid by the prevailing or paid by the non-prevailing party, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So the loser has to pay not only what they owe, but also Dan's fees.
Yeah.
Ryan, does the brokerage include the legal proper verbiage to contracts and like the checkbox that buyer agree not to be shown homes that do not offer compensation? No, that's going to be individual thing, Ida, because, Ida, because sometimes you're going to have buyers who you don't need to do that with. It's just the ones who are scratching together a down payment who do not want to be shown homes that don't offer. Open house protocol for non-represented buyers, it's specific form coming out for touring. There's a showing form. Is that what we're supposed to use for, are you, Dan, are you under the impression there's going to be an open house form along with this one-time showing form?
I don't know. I haven't seen anything in regard to the open house form. And I just got the showing form yesterday.
There was talk of an open house form and, but right now it's a one-time showing form.
Yeah.
In the event of a buyer signing multiple brokerage agreements, they're liable to all, correct? Is there going to be any sort of priority for which receive payment first?
So how would it be prioritized? I guess the first one to get the lawsuit or to make the demand, but they're responsible for every contract they entered into.
Yeah, and then we talk about this a lot. These are grown people signing legally binding contracts.
Absolutely.
They owe the money, so make sure you're educating them and letting them know exactly what they're signing, because that's part of what you guys are going to be saying you're so good at, and that's part of our value is that we explain things, we educate, we teach them what they're doing, so they don't get in this kind of trouble. Donna, no, I didn't answer your question yet, Donna. Sorry, I think I skipped it. Florida Realtors sent out an email yesterday. If you're not getting Florida Realtors emails, you kind of need to right now. I wouldn't always tell you that, but you do kind of need to right now with all these forms and stuff coming out. Make sure that you're getting those. If not, email me after. Check your email, please. Email me after. I'll forward you mine. Bonnie, can you email us all the lists of the new forms and their correct names so we can make sure we have them all? Yeah, check yours for Florida Realtors too. If not, I'll forward you their forms. I'm just getting them from when they send them out. They're all on Form Simplicity or Transaction Desk. I assume they will be on Transaction Desk soon. Will we have to sue the buyer, FRI sue on your behalf? We'll probably all have to do it together, which someone like Dan will get to do. Lucky Dan. Per earlier discussion, if not paid and Dan has to pursue for us, who's responsible for the legal costs incurred? The loser. But if it's you, it's you. So, but Dan will tell you that before. He'll tell you we don't have a case. So, but typically, if it's you, it's you. It's not the brokerage. And that's per your agreement with us. Mary Kelly. You're muted, Mary.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Can we put in the listing agreement if the buyer's agent or the buyer does not agree to a concession that the seller will pay a concession to the buyer so that we don't have this double concession and the seller only has to pay if the buyer isn't paying? Does that make any sense?
I'm a little confused.
In our listing, in the listing agreement, if the seller says, why am I offering a concession if the buyer is offering a concession? So can we put in the listing?
What concession is the buyer offering?
I think she means commission. If we're offering buyer commission.
If the buyer has agreed to offer a commission, and the
No, you mean the seller
seller,
offer a commission.
I'm sorry, what?
The seller offering a commission to him. The
And
buyers
that's
don't
what I
offer
mean.
commissions.
If the seller's offering a commission to the buyer and then the buyer has agreed to offer a commission, can we put in the listing agreement that the seller will offer a commission only if there's not a buyer commission agreement?
Trying to think that through.
I'm not sure.
Okay,
So the buyers agreed to pay you 3% or whatever. And
let's say I'm going for a listing and the
I think I understand what you're saying. That the seller is saying, I will only pay a commission if the buyer has agreed not to pay a commission.
yes, that's what I'm saying. Can we put that in the listing agreement stating that? The seller will only pay if there isn't a buyer's
How are you going to know what the buyer's offering?
Well,
Because that buyer's agreement is only between you, the buyer, and the agent.
okay.
yeah, you won't know what it says.
It's going to be hard to get to have a seller, because that was a question before, that a seller won't want to pay a commission and to the buyer, and therefore their home might not be showed or their property. But okay.
Well, yeah, but that's no different from the way it is today, right? I mean, when you go to a listing agreement, if you tell them you offer, I mean, because right now they could do $1, right?
Right.
Well, now they can do $0, but 6 months ago they could do $1, and but they never did. You know, sometimes they'd be cheap and do 1% or 2% or something like that. But you've always explained to them, well, nobody's going to look at it if you don't offer some commission, right?
Right.
Yeah, also, the buyer's agent is not going to make more than that 3%, whatever they had in their buyer's agreement, even though they've offered to pay, the buyer's offered to pay that agent 3% and the seller's offering 3%. That buyer's agent's still only going to get 3%.
Okay.
Yeah, it just replaces the other 3%. So
Okay.
now the buyer
So
doesn't
we have
have
to
to come to the
explain
property.
that to the seller, that they might not have to pay the buyer's commission if there's a buyer's.
Well, the buyer's going to come after it every time. As a buyer's agent, I'm going to come after it from the seller every single time.
Right. That's what.
Or I'm going to offer less for the property, right? I might offer 3% less for the property.
There's going to be some challenges. Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to be that much different, Mary. It's just the paperwork that we have to do, and can't put it in MLS. It's going to be a little more challenges, but you guys always say you want the bad realtors out of the business. Well, this is how it's supposed to happen. You got to work a little bit harder. You got to outwork. You've always said we're the good agents. We want the bad ones out of the business. Well, now's your time to shine as the good agent, and you are one, Mary. So I know.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay.
Okay, Christina.
I was just going to say, yeah, in regards to the open house thing, I am curious about that. I had seen some agents in California, and I think now they were going back and revising, but they had initially stated there was going to be a form for open houses where people had to sign in and state if they had an agent, and if they didn't have an agent, etc. So, I mean, I'd be interested to see how that turns out.
Isn't that what builders do now? They make you sign in if you have an agent.
More than that, Dan. And then they try to fight you all the way. They make you register them ahead of time and show up with them and hold their hand. And we've got one fighting one of our agents right now because she left town and didn't hold their hand for a couple of meetings. And it's just, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're really friendly to get you to come there, and then they want to fight you all the way.
Oh yeah, I know. I represent some builders. I know.
All right, Viv.
So not to beat a dead horse, but I volunteered to do an open house this weekend for one of our agents in the office. And I'm not sure what kind of forms I should take for the people who will be attending the open house.
Well, nothing's kicked in yet. None of these rules have kicked in yet. So, but it'd be great if you do get them to sign forms, but it's not, you can't tell them right now that it's required because it's not yet.
So I would be compensated based on what the listing says for that property.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank
you. David, you are. Everybody's asking about Well, everybody wants to sue everybody now. Everybody's asking about who gets to pay Dan.
I got to start gearing up for this.
Jika, 1031 Exchange Company, I have one. Email me separately. Monica, I don't know the answer to that question yet. The Century lock, if we switch to Thompson, I don't know the answer to that yet. You don't need to switch to Thompson yet, so we'll get all the answers for you. Question, for those of you asking about the Thompson brokerage, there's no reason to switch now. You've already paid for your association for the year, so until they start asking for money again, then we'll talk about it. We'll be talking about it in the meantime. We'll give you all the information that you need in the meantime, but there's no reason to think about switching yet. Any other questions for Dan? Ted?
Hey, mentioned something about being able to mention it on our own personal websites. Most of our websites, don't they have the IDX feed from the MLS for our listings or all the listings? Is there going to be a way, I guess we have a separate page for our own personal
yeah, you should. Yeah, listings? You can do that now, Ted.
Okay, I guess I don't do that.
No, you should have your web company put your own listings up there, and you can. Okay. They can look just like the MLS listing. They can be whatever I probably format. They'll have different formats and templates set up for you, and you just put your commission in there.
And we could put a flag over the top of it, offering commission. Or we can say whatever we want.
On there, you can do a video of you dancing around the property with the 3% sign. You can do whatever.
We know that would sell.
You'd sell them all quick like that. All right, Daryl.
It looks to me like a lot more individual property websites will be coming online so that we can mention commissions. I think that would be the best way to do it, and put a flyer, put a little, not a flyer, a rider on our signs leading people to the individual property so that we can mention.
I think email blast when you offer a property saying offer compensation.
There you go. That way too. Just thought I'd mention that.
And your social media, you can do a video, you can do share it however you want and put that in the corner next to your broker's name and everything else. You can do 3%. You could say the first thing, hey, I'm Daryl coming to you from 123 Oak Street, my newest listing. It's a beautiful 4.3, and we are cooperating with brokers at 3%. Whatever you want to say.
Come on down.
Actually, I don't have a website any longer. I had one for years and years and years. Now I use mostly my Facebook page, so it's going to be good on social. Cool.
Good. Let's do it. All right. Yvonne, excuse me for leaving early. It's all right. It's not that early. We're wrapping up. Any last questions for Dan?
All right.
Dan,
good turnout.
Dan, let's hear a little bit about what you do, how you can help these folks. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about.
Yeah, real quick. My specialty is representing people before the Florida Real Estate Commission. So hopefully you'll never need my services. But if you do have an issue with the Real Estate Commission, DBPR, or one of the local boards in regard to an arbitration or ethics hearing, I can help you. As far as commission lawsuits, we're going to start doing that. I work with an attorney, David Cohen, and we will be happy to do, if we have to enforce, we've enforced listing agreements and buyer's agreements are going to be a new thing. So we'll start gearing up for that.
Okay, I will tell you guys, I've seen Dan in action at some arbitration hearings for you guys. I don't know what I'm allowed to say, Dan, but I've never seen him lose. So
no, I've lost. Those things are hard, but yes.
I've never seen him lose. So I appreciate you, Dan. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks,
He's done a great job for us, for our company. And if you guys ever need him, just contact me or get his contact information. I sent it to you in the invitation to this, and I'm sure you'll be asking me for it. Sunaina, one last question.
Okay. Is this the same David Cohen from Orlando, Danny?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. I just wanted to know that.
Boulevard. We're both there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Dan, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You were outstanding.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Take care, sir.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, we're wrapping up here. If you have any questions for me before we go.
So Ryan, I think bottom line, essentially, we need to start using the buyer brokerage agreements right now, but using the new forms. And essentially that's in a nutshell is what is changing, right? And then obviously probably in a couple of weeks, we'll be finding out if the seller is paying commission or not. So
Yeah, so
fundamentally,
that's the main changes, Rakesh.
right?
Is
Yeah.
buyer brokerage agreement every single time. Use the new one, not the old one. And the new one says revised 724. Use the transaction broker one. I'm just going to remind you guys. It's called EBBA, which is exclusive buyer brokerage agreement -7 TB, meaning transaction broker. Make sure you do transaction broker. Revised 724. That's the form. It's one I sent you guys with the invitation last week.
One more question, Ryan, regarding
yes,
the showing
let me finish that. Let me finish that, Rakesh.
Okay.
And the other thing that you mentioned, which was, yes, you're going to have to call the listing agent for showing instructions. They're not showing for compensation. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I was asking about the showing agreement. Is that needed every time we do a showing, or only in case we don't have a BBA?
That's only for a one-time showing. That's only for Rakesh. I don't want to sign a buyer brokerage agreement, but I do want to see this property. Or you're for now it's open out, whatever. And you said that's fine, but I can't legally show you this property without or it's a violation for me to show you this property without a form.
Okay.
And I can't, and I won't do it.
Thank you.
Yes, Sunana, is your hand still up or do you have a new question? I think it's still up. Lori.
Sorry, I'm done.
Hi. I'm just wondering, where will I find the form that I should have my sellers sign that explains that the portion of the original listing contract that said that I would put it in the MLS is now removed, and that the commissions are going to be, the information will be shared individually with the brokers rather than be present in the listing?
We don't know that that's required, and I don't think it is, because it's now against the rules to put it on there. But that's what Dan was saying. He doesn't know if that's required yet. We'll know. We'll know, but I don't think it's going to. I don't think everybody's going to have their sellers sign that form. I really don't, because it's not allowed in MLS anymore.
Okay, so but I should let them know in writing that this has happened?
Sure. I don't know yet is the answer to that. I don't know.
Okay.
Can't hurt to let them know, but we don't know yet.
Well, since they signed a contract basically that included that, and this is a modification to the contract that's out of my hands, but still they signed that in good faith. There ought to be a document provided to the agents to give to their sellers that they sign, that they understand that the rules have changed, that their agent is no longer allowed to put it into the MLS, that a commission is being offered, and that anything that was formerly in the listing is being removed, and that they understand that, they are aware of that. Otherwise, they could say that I misrepresented them.
Let's see where that goes. I want to see something here.
Because it is a modification to their contract, and the broker should have to sign it also.
Hold on a second. Let's come back to that. Who's next? Ted.
Hey, I just wanted to piggyback. You had mentioned something about maybe FRI could actually add on to the buyer's agreement, that it was another option that the buyer didn't choose to see on the other properties that did not offer the seller wasn't paying a commission. Is that something that we could have updated before we start to?
No, it's not going to be on the form, Ted, because not every buyer is going to feel that way.
Us handwriting,
if it's a good enough
doesn't
price,
feel right to me. Can we have a second form available if that's the case? Because it just seems like us handwriting something in puts us legally in a situation if it's not written right.
We might be able to do that. We might be able to have a something we can add an addendum for it. Yeah.
Okay. It would just be a lot easier on us to.
We'll definitely have approved language for it. We'll definitely have approved language for it. But we don't want to recreate that form just yet because it's changing all the time, and it's changing all the time. Let's just say that they've done multiple versions of it. Lori, I want to get back to your question. Ted, I hope that's what you need to hear.
We're covered with the broker with the verbiage. I'm good with.
Okay. It doesn't say anywhere in this form that the cooperation, compensation of other brokers will be on the MLS. So I don't think we need that because we're not promising to put it on the MLS in here.
Okay, so it just says that we're putting it in, they're giving me permission to put it in the MLS.
It's
but
not
the
giving
fact
us permission to put it in the MLS. It's giving us permission to pay it. That's it. Cooperation with compensation with and compensation to other brokers. The buyer's broker, even if compensated by seller or broker, may represent the interests of the buyer. Broker's office policy is to cooperate with all brokers except when not in seller's best interest, to offer compensation in the amount of blank for a single agent, blank for a transaction broker, blank for non-rep, no brokerage relationship, and that's it.
Okay, so that
or
won't
none of
be,
the above. So it doesn't say we promise to put it in MLS.
okay, and that portion is not going to be changing.
Correct, but this has changed. It already has changed. It used to say if no cooperating commission is or compensation is offered, you cannot put it in the MLS. Is what it used to say.
Okay, yeah,
But
that I
now
know.
it doesn't say that. It says, or you can do none of the above. And if this box is checked, refer to local MLS rules regarding the entry of the property, which we're not promising to put it in MLS.
What these bastards has done is made us have to work more.
Yeah. So just so you know, they didn't change the rules on purpose. They changed them because they got sued. All the MLS
I
rules.
don't think they stuck up for us enough.
And that is a very legitimate opinion.
Okay,
A
and
lot
yeah,
of people would agree with you, but not on a recorded
and
Zoom.
I don't see what my local board has done for me in decades and decades. So I will go Thompson when the time comes.
Okay. Well, we'll be talking about that, and there's, like I said before, there's no reason to do it now, but we'll be talking about that in the near future.
Will it cost us anything to become Thompson?
Does it not? No, you still got to pay for MLS.
Cool.
All right. And we'll have separate agreement for you because you're joining a different brokerage, but it's a separate agreement for your independent contractor agreement. But you just sign new paperwork with us, and that's it.
Sounds cool.
All right. It is cool.
Cool.
All right.
Tell
Any
us
other
about-
questions before we go?
Okay.
Thanks, Lori. Any other questions before we go? Ida, are you going to do a call on one-on-one for? I'm going to do a call. Probably we'll talk about it over several of them. All right. Any other questions before we go? The form. Alex, please email me for it. I'm not going to remember that. Please email me if you guys didn't get the Florida Realtors thing. Please email me.
Are there any sites that we can be going to educate ourselves a little further on these changes where we require membership to get into the site?
What do you mean requires membership to get there? Are you talking about like the webinars and stuff where people are talking about all this stuff, the FAR and the more? They've been sending reminders and stuff about webinars. They're doing like Dan was talking about. Here it is. Yeah, here it is. Let's talk about Barber. Wednesday, July 29th from 2 to 3:30 is for brokers. Sorry, all members. July 30th, which is next Tuesday, 10 to 11:30 a.m. Florida Realtors join the Florida Realtors legal team for a discussion on the amended buyer brokerage agreement to help you do your business in your post-NAR settlement world.
Okay, so that email, I should look for it and it'll have the link.
No, you're not going to, because this is from the Osceola County Realtors, but it's for everybody. I'm going to put it right now in this chat.
How am I going to find it?
It's in the chat right now. Okay, actually, I'm going to put here. I'm just going to do this. This is better. Don't worry about that. Do this one. It's the link. That's from the Florida Realtors website. That's the link at the blue thing. So click on that. I think you need to maybe register for it, or maybe not. Yeah, click here to register. So do the one on July 30th. Register for, well, you can do either one. The one on the 29th is for brokers, but I doubt they're going to check your broker license at the door. So if you can do that or do either one, but the 30th is the one that's supposed to be for agents.
Okay.
Also, that's where your buyer broker forms are. Those of you who asked about those earlier, that's where your buyer broker forms are. You can just you can just scroll down there and find out all kinds of information. Okay. So please click on those. All right. Any other questions, guys, before we go?
Have a good one.
All right, you too.
Hey,
Thanks
Ryan,
everybody for coming.
where do we keep the recording of these session? Yeah, can you share that
On
link?
the YouTube, it's on your welcome email we sent you, Rakesh.
Okay.
Those of you who don't have that, email Michelle and I, or even Michaela, email somebody, and we'll be able to help you.
Hey, one more question, Ryan. I don't know if Michelle reached out to you regarding monthly payment, right? I'm on that plan. So I was asking if I can do from my checking account to not pay that service fee.
I don't know, Rakesh. That is a accounting question that I'm not.
Okay, because she mentioned she will talk to you. So
okay, she hasn't yet, so I don't know.
Okay,
but she'll probably talk to Carissa about it. Honestly.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, you bet.
All
right. Thank